Yes, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode for Street Talk with PAP. My name is Charlene, pleased to be the MC for this evening. And joining me on set this evening, I have a huge party. Let me just welcome them. On my left, of course, we have our PAP candidate, Koh Poh Koon. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Hello, everybody.
This is no stranger because he came in yesterday. Let us welcome Minister of Education, Minister Ong Ye Kung. And also our PAP candidates, we have Nadia, Samdin, the only lady in the house. And also, yes, we have Mr. Alvin.
Hello.
And to all of you who are watching us live right now on the YouTube as well as Facebook, once again, we'd like to urge all of you to remember to drop your comments at the comments section, and also to share lots of your love hearts and also thumbs up and like if our manifestos resonate with yours. So tonight we're going to speak on the topic that resonates with many, which is the jobs and youths. So tonight, before we begin, I would like to also conduct a little polling with our candidates and minister tonight, because weekend is the time whereby I think a lot of us are busy, especially it's a golden opportunity to meet a lot of people over the weekends. So I'd like to start with Koh Poh Koon. Yes, what have you been up to the entire day?
Well, we did the podcast recording this morning, and then spent the rest of the day interacting with residents, also doing some of these online interviews and similar to Street Talk, basically, to reach out to most of our residents.
So I would say that the whole day you've been in front of the camera, very slick already.
I'm okay.
Yes, you can see that all our candidates and also ministers are very busy canvassing for votes. It's not so like what we would think, that they have an easy life today where they just meet people, shake hands, and that's it. Because over the Instagram yesterday, we also realized that Minister Ong, your sports shoe ripped. So that's a lot.
I have to clarify, I wore it for a few years, but over the last 3 days, it somehow broke. Yeah.
What too much?
It has been a robust pair of shoes for quite a number of years.
Yes, robust.
So I wore something else today.
Okay, no brands mentioned, but today, what have you been up to?
Same thing, I was at MediaCorp recording the constituency broadcast. It's rather pressurizing.
It is.
Find it?
Only one take and that's it.
Well, it's not live, but yet it's live because it's one take. You can't get it wrong.
Oh.
Yes, and I have a group of 5 candidates with 2 new candidates, and they've not done this before.
So it's
Actually,
nerve-wracking.
neither have I.
You have been to a few live sessions.
Well, live session, but not a broadcast.
It's a pre-recorded.
Once they call it a national broadcast, they just up the ante by several notches, and it's like you cannot slip at all. So I just advise everybody, take your time. We have 15 minutes. We plan for say 13, so we have plenty of time. Don't worry. I deleted 2 paragraphs on the spot so that my teammates had more time, so that they are not so kanchong, you see. And I told them, if you slip, ignore it, carry on. And we did here and there, while sometimes looking at our script, but I think we survived. I heard Poh Koon didn't even look down at your script at all. You memorized everything.
I'm trying my very best because all my teammates already spoiled the market.
What, he memorized everything?
I have to set, same standard
As a doctor.
I'd say that he's really slick, and also I think your memory is very, your RAM for your memory is very
not
high.
in these 9 days. We're all doing without sleep, a lot of physical exertion. I think the RAM capacity has dropped significantly.
But still, you're able to ace all the recordings and interviews.
I should say, sorry. The rest of the day, I walked the blocks as usual. And today is interesting because I went to what we call Zone 1. It's one of our oldest precincts, and the residents are really warm. I'm very pleased.
Any heart-touching moments?
Heart-touching? Let me think about it.
I just came from a Cao Pao interview before this actually. And they were asking me this question, because it's all online, is it easier than previous elections? Actually, I think it's harder because as per previous elections, we have to be reaching out, running. In fact, several of us are running from door to door to try and really touch residents one by one.
I tell you a heart-touching moment, because you see, 2011 I was in Aljunied, so that was fresh. I've not met many of the residents. 2015 I got redeployed to Sembawang, so as I run the election, again I'm seeing new faces. This is my first election where I go back, and this is Zone 1, so these are people that I have been interacting with for over the past 5 years. It's a different feeling when you go there and say, hey, you live here, hey, you live here, and you already know each other. That's my first experience.
It's like a bonding, right?
Yeah.
A very strong bonding.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a heart-touching moment.
Yes.
Okay, back to right now to Nadia. Okay,
No?
the only lady here other than me. So share with us your day.
Well, we started pretty early today in Chengsan, Seletar. We had PM come to our market this morning, so that was very kind of him. Lots of photos as well, and socially distanced photos. After that, I had 2 interviews with the media, and then it was time to go out to our house visits. Of course, by that time it was already 11:30, so it was pretty hot in the day, but the residents were so kind to offer whether we wanted packet drinks. Someone was giving out packet drinks to us, which was very kind. So I covered both our private estate and then the HDB flats in the afternoon. And now I'm here.
Sounds like a hectic day.
Yes,
but
I
definitely
apologize
got
for my voice because it's going a little bit.
It's going.
It's okay, it sounds sexy. All right, over to Alvin. Yes,
Yeah, I
Alvin,
think
how's your day been?
Well, Charlene, I think similar to many others, we've been doing a lot of things, but I think 2 specific moments stood out for me. The first is we had some guests, our PSP counterparts were at our market today. So what we did is that we welcomed them. We bought Tau Hui tree for them,
Wow.
we showed them the stalls, and we introduced them to our residents. So to, as good hosts. The second thing is because I've been, every morning, I live in my constituency, so every morning I usually cycle to my constituency and I wear a helmet. And if it's sunny, I wear a pair of sunglasses. So I hang out with a lot of the residents around in the morning. So when I go now with a white on white and I visit them, they're like, wait a minute.
You look familiar.
They don't expect. They say, huh, 是你啊? So, but then it also, to them, it's a very 亲切 because, kaki nang. And I think that really touches a lot of chord in them. Yeah.
And you also have a bit of Peranakan lineage in your
Yes, yeah, I'm
family.
Baba. Yeah,
Yes.
so I can speak
A bit of Malay.
Yeah, so today.
Please address our viewers.
Ya, selamat malam puan-puan dan tuan-tuan. Ya, nama saya Alvin. Sekarang di 40 tahun, ya, umur 40 tahun. Ya. So,
You definitely don't look 40.
Oh, thank you.
He doesn't look 40.
I
He said he was
just
40 years old.
So I just turned 40 on nomination day.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
happy
Thank
belated
you, thank
birthday,
you.
Alvin.
Yeah.
Wow,
So anyway, that's
happy belated
thank you.
birthday.
Thank you.
Now we're a few days away from the polling day, and that brings us to a very important topic tonight as well, because we all know that the global GDP has shrunk drastically over the past few months, and definitely a lot of countries are looking inwards and maybe even practicing protectionism. So that would affect also our youth as well as employment. Now, top of mind for many Singaporeans are a livelihood and also employment. So tonight we're going to speak on this topic, and therefore I think I'll just start with Dr. Koh Poh Koon to share with us more on employment and what we should be looking for.
Well, I think we must understand that this is a global pandemic and an economic crisis. It is a crisis of our generation, actually. So there is no sugarcoating the kind of challenges ahead that will come. So economy is definitely going to take a hit globally as well as locally, right? And therefore, different industry sectors will be affected differently. But despite the impact, there are actually still sectors that have growth potential. Biomedical sector, for example, biomanufacturing. Partly because of the pandemic, there are a lot more kind of needs for some of these, whether it's a device, whether it's an instrument that needs to be manufactured. So there are opportunities there. But also because of the disruption brought about by COVID, many traditional businesses and industries will need to find new ways of doing things. The fact that we are all working from home, using more digital technology, using more web-based applications, means that there is a lot more opportunities now for startups. Startups creating apps, creating hardware and software that meets the new needs of new businesses. And I think these are areas which some of our young people would find interesting because it kind of has that creativity element built in. And our students who are graduating would have the necessary skills. Hopefully they also have that kind of drive to enter a startup space where they can unleash their potential, their passion, their creativity, So I think there are still opportunities out there for many of our young people to explore.
That's right. I think though many sectors are affected, but some are affected more than the others, but there's still growth potential. And while Dr. Koh is speaking on this topic, I see Alvin's face beams out because I think he knows the story that he's about to share with you about the opportunities that youth have for employment these days. 其实在现场在观看我们的这个节目的朋友，很多爸爸妈妈我知道他们可能会担心说自己的孩子毕业了会不会等于失业，所以呢其实我们有很多的就业机会，那我们也请我们的这些领导还有我们的这个 minister 还有我们的这个 PAP 的 candidates 来阐述一下。 So Alvin.
Yeah. Also, as Dr. Koh was mentioning about these opportunities, I think a couple of days ago we were talking with SM Tharman, and I used the analogy about headwinds and tailwinds. So although there are huge headwinds in the global economy now, particularly as a result of COVID, you can spot mini tailwinds that are driving certain segments of the economy globally. And I think the tech sector is obviously one, but there are many others. And I think what you're mentioning also, Dr. Koh, was, in my mind, is actually a canvas. And these are new canvases. So for example, app stores, new platforms like TikTok, Carousel, Facebook, Instagram. So these are all platforms which hitherto has not been used before, or the use has been accelerated by COVID, which has brought the digital revolution much closer than we expect. So you can now, the youth can do many things. YouTube, they can create rich content where people want to consume. If you are an academic, there is one, I saw a Bloomberg article today, 28-year-old, no degree, but he is now an economist. He's writing about economic news, such that a lot of global economists are reading his stuff, and he's getting a lot of likes and shares, and he's now without a degree. So these are all different canvases and opportunities which our young can take up, and these are the tailwinds which can drive them forward if their sails are put right. Yeah.
That's right. So yes, in the past there's a lot of people who while they're growing up, the kids will be saying I just want to be a star when I grow up. But nowadays, if you were to speak to the primary school kids, they would tell you that I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. And this is a true story. We have so many friends around us, and we just realized that this paradigm shift, no longer would they want to be a star, no longer would they want to aspire to be some, like we say, a lawyer or doctor, but then they want to be a YouTuber, because this is how the society has changed. So there are social changes that we experience. So maybe we also like to bring this opportunity to bring Nadia into this picture, because she has worked with a lot of youth, so there are a lot of aspirations that you heard from the ground. Would you like to share with us?
Sure, thanks very much, Charlene. I think when you talk about being a YouTuber, personally, I wouldn't put aside so quickly the traditional notions of youth careers. I think youth still do appreciate, in terms of becoming a professional, I think it does hold some weight, perhaps partially, of course, because parents' influence, is still there. But it's very interesting what you mentioned about wanting to become, a YouTuber, or even things like social media analytics, or even things like counterterrorism and things like that. A lot of times what happens is the industry is created first, then the pathways to the more formal pathways to those industries are created. So education comes along with it, rather than you get your law degree first in order to be a lawyer. When we talk about youth aspirations, one thing that I would say is, in Singapore, youth is 15 to 35, so it's a pretty broad range. And when we talk about aspirations, it's important to acknowledge the different life stages that you go through. So you go through everything from being a student, whether you're sitting for your A-levels or your diploma, to your degree, and then later on in life, where you also have people who perhaps are taking on part-time jobs or temporary contract jobs before you move on to full-time jobs. And after you move on to a full-time job, it's also about then where do you go from there? Do you stay in the industry? Do you want to explore something else? How do you upgrade yourself? So I know Alvin has had an interesting career pathway as well. For myself, I grew up wanting to be a journalist, and I didn't have that formal training, so I went to law school. But I think it was after my first year, and then I had an opportunity to go into journalism. And it was a big decision, and I think one thing that was really useful advice for me was, it's very difficult to do up a list of, okay, these are the 10 pros and these are the 10 cons. Because actually, when you really think about it, the weightage of each pro and con may not be exactly the same. So for our youth, I guess what I would say when you're thinking about your careers and the opportunities is really, the opportunities are out there. One thing that I found really useful and practical is to download those job apps. Whether it's like Job Street or LinkedIn, etc. Yeah, and LinkedIn.
Thank you.
And just kind of scroll through it, because you don't really know what is out there. When you go from primary school to secondary school and beyond, it's kind of just the next step in front of you, and you kind of go towards it. But once you are in your final year of university and suddenly you have to make all these choices, or your final year, in whatever course you're in, you have to make these choices about what I want to be. And our youth today are so connected, because of whether it's through the internet, and it's not just about it's the little things, but it's also things like global trends, which really resonate to our youth. And what happens in America, it resonates here. What happens in China, what happens in Korea, it resonates here as well. So for our youth, it's an exciting time. It can be very overwhelming. And I think what really helps to guide people through are things like mentorship. And there's quite a lot of programs out there in these days and age. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
If you want to be a journalist, if you wanted to be a journalist, why did you study law?
So this was a practical point. I actually applied for both social science. I wanted to do pol science and law school. But at that time, the university was in its early days. And so as long as you put law school, that was your first choice. So I went for the law school interview, and I actually really enjoyed it. So that's the other thing I would say, kind of be open to the opportunities out there. Because at first I was very fixed on going to do pol science. But when I went for the law school interview and I met the professors, and it was one of those group interviews. It's the first time I did a group interview session. And I found it very engaging to be able to debate and like spar a bit, right? So I took I was very blessed.
So there was no regrets? Or you went to the law school, it's like, why am I here?
It was quite xiong. I must say, first year was quite xiong, but you adjust along the way. And
but you didn't regret?
No.
You didn't regret?
Yeah, and I mean, when I moved into journalism, I was very grateful that on-the-job training was amply provided. I think you just have to be really hungry and willing to learn, and then there'll be people who are willing to train you.
But you still went into journalism?
I did.
Despite doing a law degree?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Doesn't hold you back.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, eventually you have the best of both worlds. Just follow your dreams. So speaking on the jobs and aspirations, I would also like to ask Minister Ong, what was your aspiration when you started as a youth? Would you like to become a minister eventually? Or
No.
what was on your mind?
I was just a playful kid. I don't think I thought beyond recess.
I don't think so. I would never be playful.
I really don't
I
think I did.
cannot link you with the word playful.
Okay, the only I was quite playful, and if there was one thing I said I wanted to be when I was young, I wanted to be an artist, as in a painter. Yeah, that was the only thing I talked about. Yeah.
So are you telling us that you can paint very well?
No, I don't paint very well. I can paint, as in everyone can hold a brush and paint, and so can I.
It sounds like Yen. So Yen can cook and so can you. Oh,
The youths are not going to get
yeah,
that
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Daddy Mommy is going to understand.
Don't say boomer.
Yeah, I think we are the same age, I guess. Same era, I guess. Yeah. So Alvin and I, we're the same era. Yeah. So because right now we have a lot of daddy mummies who are watching this as well, because our topics on youth, our topics on employment. So other than the youth who are watching in, a lot of parents are also concerned about the employment opportunities, what's in store for their kids, especially right now. I think very soon some batches are going to be graduated. So what can they look forward to? And a lot of jobs right now is very different from our times or our parents' times. So they would love to be like a digital content creator, jobs like Google Analytical related, and some things that I have perhaps may not even heard of. So maybe Alvin will be a better person to tell us what are the jobs that is only created in this time, in this decade?
Yeah, well, thanks, Charlene. I mean, from our analytics, so I work at LinkedIn, and we use data to help people to find jobs and upskill. And I think we currently have about 700 million users globally, and in Singapore about 2+ million. And so with the data, what we've seen is the top 10 jobs thereabouts. You see a lot of kinds of jobs that are quite digital related. So one of the top ones are video production. And I think with COVID now, well, a lot of people, either you do it at home, you have a selfie ring, or you must know how to operate a camera, know the lighting, and video production, you know, our friends here, these are a high demand skill for this time. But there's also things like how do you design UX, user interface. So the things on your phone, how do you make it easy to use? There are even things like sales, data analytics. How do you just, I know data analytics is a big word, but it's effectively just how do you make sense of all of the different things that you're seeing. But these are hard skills, and these are hard skills that these jobs demand. But there are also soft skills that we see from our data that employers value. And these include, like, you know, how do you persuade people, persuasion? You know, are you able to persuade either somebody, your customer, or even your teammate, or about an idea? Sell them the idea either internally, so it goes through the product cycle, or sell it to a customer, so they know about the product. There are things like collaboration. Can you collaborate across your different divisions? Things like creativity, obviously, but one of the most interesting things is adaptability, because the winds can change very quickly in any product. You know, because of this canvas that we spoke about, the competition is fierce. So can you quickly pivot from one product tweak to another? The adaptability is very important, and these are the soft skills that are as important as the hard skills, which, you know, will change over time. But the soft skills are the ones that are quite uniform, and you can use it for multiple industries. Yeah.
So you spoke about the top skills as well as the top jobs for maybe 2020
Yes,
and perhaps the
absolutely.
next few years. So right now, we also spoke about the AI, like the user interface for
Yes.
some of the apps. How do we make sure that Singapore becomes like the AI, our workforce becomes more AI savvy?
Yeah, I think to Nadia's point there, I don't want to kind of siphon it just so that it's all tech related. There is a huge tapestry of different kinds of jobs across industry.
Yeah.
You know, law, medicine, there's the creative arts, and these are very, very vibrant industries that can flourish.
Even farming now.
Yeah, and agri,
Urban
we were talking
farming.
earlier, right, about agri farming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are multiple ones. I mean, AI is just one component, but as I mentioned, these are tailwinds, you know. And if you have that ability to be adaptable to across all of these things, including farming, I think there's an opportunity for our youth.
Can I make a point
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah,
Alvin talked about pivoting.
yeah.
And I think many youth today believe that in my lifetime I must have 5 careers and must pivot here and there. Pivot means you must have an anchor point and you must have some foundation. Otherwise you can't pivot.
Correct.
Yeah, which goes back to Nadia's experience. Wanting to be a journalist, but you studied law, but you can pivot to become a journalist. But that's because you have the foundational skills. You did talk about soft skills. They are sometimes soft. I think they are sometimes also quite technical. And in your case, I would imagine a law degree taught you quite strong analytical skills and able to articulate and able to communicate, which actually share the same fundamental skills as journalism. And if you think about it, it does share many other fundamental skills, like being a politician requires some of those skills
Some
as well.
debating skills too.
And I think it's to be, the more uncertain careers are going to be, the more you need to pivot. Actually, the more you need to focus on your fundamentals. Yeah, I go to IT. Before we have COVID, I will visit IT a few times a year, and I always keep telling the same story because there are different set of students. I always show them the video of Gordon Ramsay. That, do you know what he wanted to be when he was young? You asked me that question. Wasn't
No.
a chef.
No?
He played football. He wanted to be he wanted
Footballer.
to play football. Then he broke his leg, and after he broke his leg, he decided, okay, done. He doesn't say done. He's much more vulgar.
Minister of Education.
and then so he learned how to cook, and now he's a celebrity chef. So I always tell the students that, you know, what do you think is the fundamental thing that he wants to do? And I suspect, I met him once actually, and I should have ask him. I suspect what he really wants to do and is passionate about is to entertain on the stage as big as he can. If not a field and a stadium, why not a studio and a kitchen? And that's what he loves to do.
I
And
guess
so
it
he
follows
could pivot,
passion, yeah?
and he could pivot, but it came from the same foundation. Yeah.
So we can transform in that sense. It's like, you know, right now maybe a lot of you, they might be graduating with a degree that perhaps they will never be able to put to use, but that becomes a pivot, like what Minister Ong has
So
said.
you have to be very mindful what are the fundamental skills, essential skills that I have picked up, and where can I apply it. And employers should recognize that.
Which brings me to a point. So how should the workers, or how should all these people start to upskill themselves so that they become valuable, and also they become valuable to all these potential employers? Like talking about upskill.
Are you asking me?
Anybody? How should they?
Yeah,
you know,
he's
upskill?
the union guy too, in charge of upskilling.
You know, in the unions, we emphasize the fact that the workers cannot remain static because industry is evolving and changing. Companies are looking for people with new sets of skills to enter new job roles, right? So the whole idea is to have a mindset of lifelong learning, right? And this is where MOE and all the efforts to push lifelong learning, skills future is very important. But mindset change is always the hardest thing to do because everybody wants to stay in a comfort zone. Change is always more difficult, takes more effort. So in the union, we've been devoting a lot of energy and time to really help employers to see change as necessary and for workers to also keep pace with that. It's beyond just funding, it's really about willingness to do so. And helping the workers to really understand where the future needs are helps them to also rationalize what kind of skills they need to pick up. Otherwise, you will just be learning broad-based skills and find it very hard to pivot to something that they need to do, you know, in an area of need.
Yeah, and there's so many ways you can learn skills. You know, for the young, because I advise through a couple of non-profits, the youth, and I always tell them, just take on internships. Because over the years, as I was recruiting for people in the companies that I've been in, of course they'll send a resume, right? So you look at the resume and everything, and some of them have quite sterling schools and everything. But they ask me what I look out for. I
Yes,
look
what
out
do you look out
for whether, even if you're young and you're starting out, but have you done something in the community, for example? Have you tried to start up a business, or have you even done something at school? Something. There's just one thing I'm looking out for. Can you turn up? Do you turn up on time? And this is something which, you know, people don't expect. But I need to know that you're reliable. I need to know that, well, if I need you at this point of time, that you can turn up and you can deliver a piece of work that I can use. And that is incredibly important. And I think the youth, which I talked to, said, oh, I did not realize that was such an important thing. Yeah, and also when you then do internships, I can now judge a little bit whether can you collaborate with people. Are you able to then create something? That's a signal to an employer that is much more valuable than something that's on paper. To me, as an employer.
The turning up and getting work done and being reliable is so important. And sometimes we forget when we say we want to be a star, a YouTuber, I can do whatever I want, I just turn on the video and then I perform and I'll earn $1 million. It doesn't happen. In real life, it doesn't happen. You don't dribble a ball like Lionel Messi just because you are naturally talented. There's no X-Men, and there's really no X-Men. You're not. You can just do this because you're born differently. No, it is hours, years, weeks, days, months of practice over and over again.
Discipline.
And it's a lot of discipline. And the more you see someone performing so gracefully, so in such an entertainment way, you look behind them, the amount of practice is incredible.
Like the Chinese always have a saying, 台上10分钟，台下10年功.
Yes, that must be a saying in your industry.
I think for any industry. I think you have to put at least 10,000 hours, man hours to really practice and make it a skill, to make it a habit so that you can really perfect it. So also bringing to the point of discipline is very important because punctuality for a lot of youth is a very important determining factor for employment, especially for employers, right?
I did want to add one thing. I think because I also helped to look at first round of recruitment in the firm, And one thing when it comes to, graduates who come in, one thing that I would say is, you come in with great CVs that you've built based on you've studied this, you got this grade, etc. But ultimately, what you want to know as an employer is how good a colleague are you going to be? How good a co-worker are you going to be? So sometimes, you may think or you may feel that your experience stacking groceries, in law school days, I used to work in the school cafe and I used to peel prawns in the morning. That was my job before to make the aglio olio. And you may think that these little jobs are irrelevant, but they're really not. It really shows something to your potential employers. So I would say that don't be afraid to put in your real work experience. It's something.
So you actually put it in your resume?
Yeah, I worked in the school cafe. I was the waitress.
Because when we recruit people, nowadays the CVs all look so great. And everyone is so articulate. Yeah, how do you differentiate? And suddenly you got this guy who did char kway teow for 3 months, and you're like,
I want that.
I want the char kway teow.
Anything I want to try the char kway teow.
Maybe you just want the char kway teow, don't want them in.
The other thing I would talk about, I'm also very conscious that our conversation has been a lot about tech skills and degrees, etc. I think when we talk about youth aspirations, one thing that is important is the access to these opportunities and these aspirations in the first place, because sometimes it's not always that easy to have these aspirations and then to recognize how you can go about achieving it. So you also talk about picking up skills, and internships and picking up internships. Sometimes people are priced out of these opportunities. You're not able to take on an unpaid internship because you have obligations, you have certain bills at home that you need to pay, etc. So while we talk about youth aspirations, I think one thing that matters a lot to me is access to these opportunities in the first place.
If I can just add on to that one.
No one can.
Yeah, so I want to shout out to a very good friend of mine. His name is Clarence. He's been helping us out on the ground. And it's a good example because Clarence has helped to set up this thing called Access, which helps youth to gain access to these kind of opportunities. And recently, he's just graduated. Clarence has just graduated from university, and he was looking for roles, right? And you're there, how do you know, as an employer, how do you signal that Clarence, for example, is a good employee? But for years, he's been helping us out on the ground in Kereta Ayer. And I could see him transform. I could see how he's applied himself, turn up, and become reliable. And over time, he just turns up. And over time, I can see that he's created and built programs and can rally people together. So when he was applying for jobs, I had some in my network that said, this young man is reliable. If you want to give him an interview, right? So I just get him the interview, a reference. Of course, he has to then run through the hoops of the interview, but that reference, that reputation, I think opened that door for him. Then the rest is up to him. Yeah, and he's gotten that role. So I'm really proud of him. So Clarence, well done. Yeah, but it's really a good story that your reputation matters, because and people think, oh, you need to get a job then you get a reputation. No, but how do you turn up, even in the smallest things in the community work, and that gives a signal to people that you're reliable.
You kept emphasizing on this word "turn up." Have
Yes.
you met anyone, or have you been been disappointed many times with candidates who never turn up for the interviews?
Yeah, a bit harsh lah. But then if candidates don't, and I have interviewed so many, because in my former company they give you how many have you interviewed, 100 plus, and those that they turn up and they don't read about the company, they don't read the news about the company. I'm like, seriously, honestly, you're wasting time. Yeah, there are so many more eager candidates, and they look good on paper, but then when you speak to them, they don't prepare, you see. And I had one person who we've had to unfortunately let go, who had sterling credentials.
After being hired?
Yeah, was hired before I joined, but had sterling credentials for all the top schools, everything. But that person could not get along with people, could not be humble enough to learn from others. And even with your sterling credentials, it just doesn't work out. Yeah, so I think that those kind of things matter in the workplace. Yeah.
Yes, because we have also given examples of what employers will be looking out for, the potential some strengths that they are looking up for, but also we have highlighted some of the things that we do not want to see in youths who come for a job being unprepared. So what other things that maybe we could give them a little insight about being an employer or being somebody who has been in a management level? What sort of characters or what sort of this kind of traits that you do not want to see in candidates or like youths who actually come and, you know, ask for a job? Maybe each one of you can chime in.
That you don't want to see in you.
Yeah, because we
Well,
keep
it's
saying, because we keep emphasizing that, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. So everybody knows what is good, but then they may not know what is not good, what is bad for a job, for
Lack
example.
of passion. I mean, I was in the healthcare sector, right, doing surgery, looking at patients. The last thing I want is to have someone with a bad attitude with no passion for the job, because if you are slipshod, it means somebody pay with it for their lives, pay for it with their lives, you see. And when I guide my younger doctors about which specialty to go into, what careers they should choose, I always ask them, what's your passion? What interests you? What keeps you, you know, excited at 3 a.m. in the morning, you know, when you've done this for the 10,000th time and you're still excited to do your 10,001 case. If you're excited at 3 a.m. to do this, again, after the 10,000th time, then you found the right career and the right path for yourself. But if you get tired and bored after you do it for the 100th time, then perhaps you are not choosing it wisely. And my professor used to tell me, if you find a job that really excites you like it's a hobby, then the job is not a job, it becomes a real passion. And when you're passionate about something, you've got to be good at it, because nobody ever complains they spend too much time on a hobby, because they will spend hours and hours and hours that just go by. And because you spend that 10,000 hours at it, you will be very good at it.
So pursuing your passion, and that your interest becomes your hobby and becomes your job in the end, right? So this is something that I think it's good, because a lot of times we always emphasize on what is good, and suddenly nobody will ever say that, oh, I'm tardy in my work and therefore this is not a good traits that employers are looking out for. So we like to also hear from each one of you. So he has given one character that he doesn't want to see. So one characteristic.
So I interviewed hundreds of people in my career. I would say I'll just list some of the things that will impress me and will not impress me. If you start asking me or grill me, I'm interviewing you, but you end up grilling me about employment terms, it's like why should I?
So is it like a no-no to start
I would
asking
suggest
about
no.
better wages?
Yeah,
right,
because
the
these
sport?
days, for you to recruit someone of good caliber and hardworking, you know, talented, you've got to offer competitive terms, right? You got to offer leave, you know, medical benefits, you know. So you'll be really cool if you don't even ask. You'd be quite cool if you don't
That's
even
a tip.
ask. You just assume that you're a great company. So that's why I didn't ask. I assume it will be competitive. You know, that will probably impress the interviewer a bit. I would say there's always a question, such as in 5 years, where do you see you will be? Quite standard question.
Yeah,
And the standard answer is always, in 5 years, I want to be a manager, you know. So
So what would be something different?
Something different. Something different will be, go back to what Poh Koon said. It goes back to your passion. Your passion cannot be a manager, right? It's not like you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, manager, work in cubicle. Nobody ever tell you that. You know? Every kid want to fly an aeroplane, want to save lives, want to do something good for the community. So articulate that. In 5 years, what do you want to do? Articulate not your hierarchy, the level of hierarchy that you wish to be, but articulate what you wish you would have accomplished. No, I wish I invent something, something innovative, you know, help 1,000 people, whatever it is. So these are just some basic do's and don'ts, and peel prawns when you have time. Yeah.
I feel it's very stressful advice. I mean, like, to be honest, I no longer hold it against, you know, students who come forward and they actually don't really know what they want to do in 5 years, because it
That's
really
an okay answer, by the way.
Yeah.
I would be quite impressed if you say
With
5 years.
honesty.
Honestly, I haven't thought about it. I just want to do this job well.
Yeah.
That would impress. Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
Because it's really about paralysis of choice as well. Like I was saying, you know, about access to all these options and opportunities. And what I really look out for, and you know, the juniors who work with me have really impressed me, is their ability to take ownership of the work. It's not a matter of, okay, I've done my assignment, I'm just going to put it in your in tray and I'm going to go. right? It's really about the ownership of the work and wanting to make sure, because to be frank, law school doesn't really prepare you for practice. It really doesn't, because ultimately law is a service industry. It's about how you engage with your clients. If you're someone who really liked to mug last time, put your headset on and just chiong in the library, and you think that in the workplace you can work in a room and just put your headphones on and close the door, it really isn't going to quite work, because you're going to have to talk to people a lot. You're going to have to take on their issues as if it's your own, and you have to build that trust with the clients. So for fresh graduates who take ownership of the work and are proud of, want to stay until that document is sent out, which sometimes is late at night, unfortunately. But that is what really impresses me, when there's ownership and accountability of the work. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from the audience, one of the viewer. Sheena was saying a business person can give such inputs, if not even better distinctions too, because this is in the context of the general election. I would like to hear from you as MPs and ministers and PAP candidates on a systematic level, what is being done in order for our youth to grow into such people?
Yeah, this goes back to our talk yesterday, isn't it? I think education plays a huge role. Education plays a huge role. We talked about yesterday when we talked about education, and just now we talked about pivoting. So what is a little bit counterintuitive is that in this era, instead of teaching everybody coding at a very young age, save it for later, but instead teach the basic values and fundamental skills when they are young, especially in primary school, lower primary. Start with moral values, inculcating the right moral values. Instead of teaching coding, teach cyber wellness first, protect yourself and knowing how to behave in the cyberspace, and teaching teamwork. CCA is just so important now, because through CCA you get to know people and you work with people, and then build up those skills starting with the fundamentals, which is why under our Learn for Life reform, one big part is actually refreshing our curriculum. And the refreshing of curriculum is largely the essential soft skills that we are refreshing.
Yes, truly, we have to build on the fundamentals. And now maybe we'll have to look at some more comments from our viewers.
Wait for that, I'll just add that actually at the system level, even in universities, we have like NUS Overseas College, for example. That actually allows many of our undergraduates in the university to explore their passion, right? Because we talk about passion being an important ingredient. If they have a passion, they have an idea, they want to really try it at the marketplace, create a startup, a product, a prototype. This is where NUS Overseas College exposes these students to an overseas internship environment in a startup, where they can really get some little bit of a hard knock at a no-risk kind of environment. You can learn, try something, you fail, you learn your lessons, but you develop some resilience and you actually allow your passion to play out.
The NOC is one program, but actually the change is much more fundamental than that. I would say from all post-secondary education, IT, poly, uni, they've all changed quite fundamentally. It's a lot more experiential now, because it's not just the studying, but it's the internship, it's the overseas exposure, it's the cultural exposure, it's the project work, and it's the entrepreneurial opportunities, and all these add up to make education an experience in the university. Because online learning is around and is actually quite attractive. And the only difference between going to a physical campus versus online learning is the experience. And the experience is what matters now.
Minister, you said something within that which I wanted to pick up is really important. It's about cultural awareness. And cultural awareness, I find as jobs and companies are more global in nature, and even Singapore companies, the ability to understand a different culture, where they come from, Southeast Asian culture, for example. You have Indonesians, you have Vietnamese, Malaysians, Thais in a group, right? You have in your workplace. These things are very important for a couple of reasons. One is that it allows you to then work together with people from different cultures. That cultural awareness, that cultural intelligence, as it were. The second is also that the marketplace is so diverse, right? So different products will fit different markets. A product which can work in Thailand may not perform as well as in Indonesia. So if you have that cultural awareness and the cultural quotient, as it were, it gives you that edge. That's very, and I know we've been trying to raise that awareness about getting to know ASEAN, for example, and I think that would be a very, very important an enabler for our youth.
Yeah.
And also for our youth, we know that as adulthood looms for our youth, which also means that they understand the weight of their vote. And also the platform for election is a way for them to also have their voices heard, and maybe for the positive changes to be seen, and also for the future to positive and bright future to unfold. So right now it also brings us a very important point, which I want to ask our minister as well as our PAP candidates. What should the youth be looking out for when they vote? Yes, big question.
Yeah, big question. I think the minister get to go last, right?
Okay, so Nadia or maybe Alvin?
Ladies first.
Oh, this
Oh,
is
ladies first for once, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think youth today are no longer apathetic. That's really an old story that has been rehashed, and I feel no longer rings true. Youth are very aware about the power of their vote, what it could mean. I think while it's important to read manifestos, it's also important to get to know the candidates that you look out for. And this is something that youths also appreciate, when candidates are more accessible and relatable, and you're able to understand about what individual candidates stand for as people. Other than that, I think other than national level issues, it's also good to know what's going on in your constituency. I think sometimes because of the nature of work in Singapore or study in Singapore, you tend to not be too connected to your immediate vicinity and your immediate neighborhood. And I think it is important to be aware of what the issues are and what the candidates plan to do about that. Yeah, so that's
Well
me.
said, Nadia.
Thank you.
I just alternate a bit. So we go to somebody else who's more senior.
She's pointing to me now.
Yes,
Well,
Dr. Koh.
I think we must not forget that this election is taking place in an unusual time. It is a pandemic, it's an economic crisis, and the immediate future is not certain, and therefore you can't really foresee what the longer term future would exactly be like. I would say that youths have aspirations and they want to also have a good future. Therefore, voting wisely is important. Because you don't want to be the lost generation, a generation with lost opportunities where your future becomes bleak, right? And to have a certain future, you need a team where you can have leaders help you navigating through an uncertain time. And in this uncertain time, what you want is a strong, good government that can understand what it takes to go through uncertainty. You need a government with a good collaboration and nexus with industry, so that between government and industry, you can create the job opportunities that our youth are looking for. And I would say take your vote seriously, because what you do today determines the foundation upon which your future will be built upon. And it is not about whether it's opposition survival, it is about national survival. And you can't have a nation not surviving this crisis and still talk about the future. So focus on what it takes to get through this immediate crisis while building the foundations for the future.
Well said, Dr. Koh. And
Oh,
because
sorry, we're jumping again because
Yes.
you had to go last.
no, no,
Yeah,
you
he's
have to
gonna
go
go
last.
last.
他是中间的，
The
是
cue,
中
the
间
cue,
的。
yes.
Yeah, I
Alvin.
think to Nada's point, youth are not
Apathetic.
apathetic
Yeah.
anymore. So in our rounds, I've met many youth in our constituency, and they'll look me in the eye. I remember one youth. We went in, usually you go in and say, please support us, 请支持我们行动党，请投我们一票 and everything. And then this youth,
为什么我要支持你？
yeah, no, in fact, what she did was they'll come back. So I went on to another household, and she came back and says, "Oh, could I have a minute? What? Tell me about it. What do you believe in? Yeah, and what kind of voice will you be for us? Very, very unusual. I mean, you get maybe 1 out of 1,000 of these encounters in your everyday hustings, and so it gave me pause. Like, how can I be an advocate? How can I, as a younger candidate, how can I be a voice to this person? And frankly, I don't have the answer. And I think it's okay to not have the answer, because our generation, we need to be nimble about answers, and we have to try to, I think the Singapore conversation, right, we need to try to co-create and bring our youth together to formulate that answer for our generation, which is unique. At the same time, to Dr. Koh's point, while you have that paradigm, you also need to be able to understand that this is a very unique and unusual election. It's a global pandemic and one of the worst economic crises ever. So the youth, while looking at that perspective, they also have the bigger perspective that your vote is so critical at this time. And you really want to make sure that you have a team whom you can trust and who has a track record to help bring Singapore out of this crisis. So there's that duality, I feel. Yeah.
Yes, I think young people may have been notoriously known to neglect the significance of voting, but these days I think they have come to realize the importance of their voting. It is an important and decisive one. So now back to Minister Ong. What would you think that the youth should be looking out for when they vote?
A few points. We make the pandemic sometimes big gloom and doom. It is serious, but I lived through 4 economic crises in my life: 97, 2001, 08, and now. Each time the economy tanked, but there are always some sectors that are still doing well. Yeah. So you take Asian financial crisis, property and other markets crash, but export is still okay because Japan, because it's a regional crisis, our big markets, US, Europe, Japan, they were okay. Take global financial crisis, financial sector very badly affected, but that was also the period where services sector boomed and we built the IRs during that time. So there's always something that is still offering the tailwinds, as Alvin put it. And today, I think we can see some of those opportunities. So it's never totally gloom and doom. Second is that for the youth today, it is actually a very exceptional time in history. I can't imagine something more significant, so many significant things all happening at the same time in your lifetime. I can name a few, and sometimes people wait for a century before something like that happens. Number one, you are seeing the rise of 2 big powers, US and China. One is still the global superpower, the other is right at our doorstep, and soon the biggest market in the world. And you now have 2 big behemoths that we have to deal with. Different cultures, different political system, Singapore in the middle. And the more bicultural we are, with that cultural connectedness, the better we will be. But this is unprecedented in human history for a long time, right? But it's happening in your lifetime. And second is the tremendous advancement of technology. It's unimaginable. The kind of things that we can do today on our smartphone, to me when I was young, is science fiction, you know. And now you're born.
Casio watch, and that's about it.
Yeah, now you're born.
Harry Potter.
No, when I was born, no Casio watch. It's all needle and you
Sorry, forget different era.
I'm slightly older.
He's trying to disassociate himself.
And so this just amazing. And so whatever you say about protectionism, technology makes it inevitable that the world is so connected, you like it or not. When it's protectionism and you put impediments in globalization, that's just politics. Yeah, but technology is weaving everything together. And then finally, you have COVID-19, which is a big pandemic of a century maybe, and hit at the heart of the global economy. So you got all 3 things coming together, and in such unprecedented time in history, I think for the youth, election is the start of the beginning. We get an election done. Hopefully we have a united Singapore after the election, whatever the results may be. And from there, we work together as a country to get out of the storm, to make the best use of the big markets that's coming out, 2 big superpowers, as well as a global economy, technologically advanced. How do we get ourselves locked into that growth, that wave of growth? COVID-19 is a big, I said it in Chinese the other day, it's a big mahjong reshuffle, you know? You just reshuffle all the tiles, and now you pick out your tiles, where is Singapore? I think it has that effect, So I think you want to vote on the basis of what kind of government gives you the hope that when you open your tiles, I have a good hand, I know how to play, I maximize my chance, and I have hope for the future. And I think that is what probably you want to look at.
And may you have a winning hand.
We
Yeah,
have to
five
work
of us
very
are
hard
gonna be
together
Madam
for
P.
a
Yes.
winning hand. Yeah.
Yes, and also I think the hardships of winter will also see spring eventually, and therefore brighter future for all of you and all of you who have been watching us live on the Facebook as well as YouTube. Thank you so much, Minister, as well as our PAP candidates, for your tremendous insights and inputs. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching us live. And you've been watching Straight Talk with PAP. My name is Charlene, and once again, please join me in thanking my guests this evening. Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene.
I shall see you next time.